IMHO Talk Show.
We are joined by none other than women's history. Mm-hmm. And I say women's history because she was the first female of color to be police chief of the city of Charlottesville. We are joined by La Familia.
What?
Chief Dr. RASHALL Brackney. Dr. Brackney, how you been?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey.
How's it feel?
You know, I mean, like we still, you know, kicking and screaming our way through, but you know, we hanging in there, you know, blessed, you know, it's all about perspective, you know, so definitely blessed. How about yourself?
I hear you. A little bit cooler up here in Cambridge, Mass. It's chilled up here as well, but not for the same reasons y'all are chilling. It's just cold up here on the Easter. Right. It's just cold up here.
Yeah. Well, you know, we got food. Like Mother Nature played a little trick on us. We thought summer was coming early into February, and then mid March was like not so fast. You know, so we feeling the breeze too.
I know my sister used to call that trick of brother weather.
Chief, good to hear your voice. We've been missing you. It's been like a where's Waldo? Where's the chief? Where you been?
Hey, listen, trying to stay out of the crosshairs, you know, and the work that we do every single day.
Right.
That's right.
I understand.
Good stuff. Like I said, pleasure again to have you on our airwaves. Been trying to follow the great work that you continue to do. And so first, you know, being that we've been celebrating women's history, right? Like when it comes to your efforts and your work that you've been doing, like you know, like all other things aside, which we'll get to, like, give us your feelings and your stance on being women's history, meaning being you know, all that you've accomplished, like what women's history means to you as you approach your different endeavors and being the first to do this and first to do that.
You know, thank you for that. I always am torn when we start thinking about first, right? Mm-hmm. When you're the first, you're the only, the other. Mm-hmm. That in 2024, in March, we are still saying those same things. That we still have women for the first time, women of color being the first time. And I'm encouraged by it, but I'm also disheartened by it. Like, what haven't we learned yet? Mm-hmm. Why haven't we figured this out? That we have to break through so many ceilings and so many barriers just to get where folks have been for a very long time now, who don't look like anything like us on there. And just one correction. So not just the first woman of color to run that police department in Charlottesville, the first woman ever.
Okay.
Still. They're not putting any other women back in there. Come on.
You don't think so?
No, absolutely not.
Why not? You done messed it up. You went through like a bull in a china shop and messed it up for everybody after you. All the women after you.
You know what? I think not. No, I don't think we messed it up. I think the city messed it up, right? Mm-hmm. The city can't get it right. Sound like, you know, the movie Life can't get right. So they mess it up. And because the city is comfortable in its white progressive appearances of dismantling systems of patriarchy and supremacy. They don't want anybody in there. They just want it in name tag only. So, and that's just in my humble opinion. They don't want it because look who they brought after me. Somebody who's a very palatable, agreeable white male who comes in on his white shiny horse. But now everything, you know, he's doing everything that was done in the 90s, rounding up black folks, putting cameras in the community, talking about we're going to arrest juveniles and their parents for their juvenile behaviors, partnering with Project Safe Neighborhoods, you know, so I didn't mess it up. The city just doesn't know what it wants.
I wasn't like,
she was being facetious.
I hear you. The city just don't know what it wants.
Can I say something, piggyback on that real quick? Because I have made that statement to a lot of people, not necessarily phrasing it, the city doesn't know what it wants, but it is my opinion at times that the city does not want what it is asking for.
That's where I was going to.
And so I feel that at times individuals may be given an impossible task. And that the task may be given in response to it's maybe a knee-jerk response, maybe a thoughtful response, but in response to the demands of the community, but with actually no real intention behind making whatever it is that they may be, the action they may be asking for to be put in place, materialize.
Yeah. I think you see that in a lot of venues too, right? It's like a lot of times you need a fall guy. Well, you don't need, but a lot of times whatever that structure is sort of looking for a fall guy to say, well, if it doesn't work, then you know who we pointing the finger at. But I'm sorry, Dr. Brackney, go ahead.
No, right. No, you're right. I mean, think about it. It's a win-win always for the city or anyone who appoints a first or an only or an other, right?
When you started that job, when you began as chief, did you know that you were being given an impossible task that the city didn't actually want?
No, as a matter of fact, that's the thing that I underestimated, right? I thought we had a Black mayor, a female mayor, a sister that's coming from the community. Dr. West Bellamy was sitting in there at the time. Like, there were these individuals who really were about that work of deconstructing and dismantling, right? The systems that were Charlottesville. It was right after the Unite the Right. So I don't think it was an impossible task. Was it a Herculean task? Absolutely. But it's not impossible to dismantle systems that allow people to do well in their communities. I don't think that's an impossibility. We have enough resources to do it. But here's the thing about it is they always sit in a safety space. When you put somebody like myself in, a Black woman who I'm not your DEI hire. I don't care what anybody else said around their little affirmative action comments when they hired me. When you put somebody else in like me, as the institution, you can say, look how progressive and forward thinking we are if I'm successful. If I fail, right, regardless of the reasons of the failure or the perceived failure, they're like, look, we tried. We gave the person an opportunity. They couldn't do it. So they never lose. So it's always a win-win when they're the first or when they think about it in those ways. It's never always a win-win when it's somebody, who comes in and tries to change systems.
Yeah. Now, and Dr. Brackney, like, I was gonna try to ease you, and I was celebrating you first, but
sorry.
but Max want to jump in the deep end, so let's do it.
Max. I miss popping down and just popping in and saying, "Hey, what's up, my sister?" I don't know if it,
Right, same.
So you said a lot, and I appreciate your boldness, and I know that the community and our people like appreciate what you said when it comes to just being bold and speaking up. So let's take it back, right? And let's sort of like be sequential when it comes to maybe we need to refresh some folks, and maybe some folks are new to this story and not aware. Like, so I'd like to start with what was your initiative within the police department that eventually turned sour? Like, what was it that you were doing or attempting to do within the police department, like before things went bad?
Yeah. And so, when I first arrived there, as we all know, it was on the heels of the Unite the Right rally. The community is still very raw. I'm preparing for the first marking of the events of the previous year in 2018. I've got 6 weeks to do that from the time I arrived. Jason Kessler, if you remember, is trying to have another rally there. People are in front of the station, literally marching and demonstrating. Cops and Klan go hand in hand. Honk if you hate the police. Out in front of the police station. We're also preparing for the fact that James Alex Fields is going to be on trial later that year, or starting his trial for the murder of Heather Heyer and the maiming and just assaulting of close to 19 other individuals. And I'm coming in after the heels of the Keefe report, who's saying that Charlottesville was a complete failure. Interesting, he absolved UVA from everything. And, he may have said that, the state police were might have not done or weren't as successful. So I'm coming in with that. I'm coming in with what does it look like to train a department in 21st century policing standards when they've not had any training other than this most basic training that comes out of, Ware's Cave on the other side of the mountain. So you can imagine what the training looks like. Right. It's not training that is going to be successful for someone who looks like us. In addition to that, they had not had any professional development, any sort of training outside of their own city or even the state. the majority of them were not part of major affiliation professional associations, lacking degrees, physical degree or professional degrees. So trying to start degree completion programs because the top tier of your department all had high school diplomas running your policing agency. Now, imagine a $3 million or an $18 million agency. Not saying that that's not it. You know, you make it through high school, you know, alive. I'll take it. So I'm coming in with all of those, and I'm also introducing to the community and to the police department what does cultural bias and implicit bias look like, and not just implicit, explicit, where people may be racist that are in this department, and I'm coming in as the Black woman from above the Mason-Dixie line in charge of it.
Right.
The community is trying to get a civilian review board together, if you remember at the time. Like, it was just a lot. So we start putting these structural systems in place, and we find that the community is not as wanting of those systems as it says it is. And people are extremely vocal. And I'm coming in where people are comfortable, you know, calling me out my name, Black folks, you know, calling me some biracial stuff, literally up in public meetings, calling me the B word to my face. And these are being disrespected in ways that no one else would have ever been disrespected. That includes Al Thomas, Longo, and the current chief. I'm sure no one's ever walked up to him and called him a B.
Man.
Right? Not happening.
Yeah.
So those are all the things I'm managing. And then we find out that there's corruption and violence and even more misogyny going on in the department. And when you're told to actually start holding some white boys accountable who are carrying guns and badges, that doesn't go over well because there is this entitlement that people believe that they are deserving of jobs, and especially police jobs, and particularly when they're policing Black communities.
But did that come as a surprise? Did that come as a surprise to you, like the level of corruption?
Yes. And the only reason it came as such a surprise to me is because they were doing it so blatantly, and it was so many supervisors. Like, it was the supervisors who were leading this, field training officers, supervisors leading these things. And, you know, in agencies, you will have levels of corruption, and we were sustaining lots of complaints against them. But the level of comfort with that and how long they had operated with impunity before my tenure. So these things don't just happen in the 3 years that I'm there. These are going on for decades under other people's tenure, and people are comfortable. And when you start making people uncomfortable, to include having them criminally charged for the things they're doing, terminating them, demoting them, and the whole gamut, that doesn't go well with people who are invested in the system.
So what do you feel was the kicker there? Was it?
I'm surprised you said that, Joe.
Yeah, like, so what does, so do you feel, and Razor, you can get to your point if I don't touch it, exactly what you want to get at, but I was curious, like, what do you think it was more so being Black and female to where there was resistance, or do you think it's a corrupt system that actually doesn't want to change?
And here's one more thing.
I'll take Max, and then we got Razor in there too. Y'all
yes,
you're right. Jot them down. Got one too.
But here's something else to consider. Oftentimes, an individual may be given a task. This is what we want you to accomplish, but we also want to tell you how to do it. We want to give you the strategy to do it. And so how much then did your strategy, or not following the strategy that may have been laid out for you, play into that too?
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing about telling people how to do it, it's not a matter of the system. Like I said, it's not individual people who are racist or corrupt. You know, if you listen to Brian Williams, professor at UVA, he said something very interesting for the first time. It's not a bad apple. It's not a bad tree. It's not a bad branch, reed, trunk, or root. It's poison soil. So you're putting good seeds in poison soil, and you're always going to get a bad product. So when people are part of a system and they're not inoculating themselves against the poison, it's easy to be corrupted by the system. So that's the first part of it. And it is a Black female coming in. And whether people want to admit this or not, in Charlottesville, and again, I'll say it here, Black community was the most unforgiving to me. Like, Black community was the one that was in my face the most, right? And then when I'm gone, that's a community that then becomes vocal about my leaving, right? But when I was there, there was limited love.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I feel like Wes and Nakaya face the same thing, honestly. Like, I'm glad you pointed that out, but I'm glad you pointed that out because I feel like that we do that as a people, and like we do need to be called out about it. And if this steps on toes, and then so be it. But me speaking as a Black person of the community, that's absolutely right. It's like we, like don't know what we got till it's gone kind of thing. Like we still have sort of a crab in the barrel mentality. Until it's gone, then we want another one. But then when we get it, we don't necessarily know how to treat it. I just think what she said was very interesting because inherently, I just believe that law enforcement in this country is always going to have a problem because I just believe the entire country is anti-Black, period. So anytime. Oh,
yeah. You're not lying. Like anti-Black rhetoric, anti-Black violence, racial terror as a means of controlling populations. Absolutely. And when I'm screaming this stuff from the rooftops, that this is what's going on and this is how you dismantle it, how do you do it differently? Again, I think sometimes because we can't imagine anything different, we keep trying to reimagine and reinvent, etc. I'm going to shout out to your former mayor, always my mayor, Nakaya Walker. She started something like imagining a just Seville. She didn't say reimagine a just Seville because we ain't never had a just Seville. We've never had a just criminal justice system. It's always been a criminal legal system for us. So that becomes the difficult part of it when you're trying to create something for the first time and people can't see the vision because they do want something now. Yeah. Like literally now. And if you think about it, before I even arrived, I remember my first council meeting. I'm sitting there with my husband. I'm not even your chief yet. They're just recommending to be the chief. And people are screaming at me and cussing at me and in my face. And I'm thinking to myself, Malcolm X, the most disrespected, unprotected, neglected woman in America is the Black woman, right? And how would that have ever gone down under any other circumstances? I haven't seen any of them same persons jump up in Longo's face. And he over there doing some stuff at UVA. And I'll say that out loud. I haven't seen none of them jump up in your current chief's face. And he doing some stuff over there. But the comfort level with continuing to pile on and how we treat each other is why supremacist institutions survive. Yeah. If we give them a foothold. Yeah. And we've seen the same thing with President Obama too, even at a federal level. That's nobody has ever stood up in the middle of an assembly and said, "You lie, you're a liar," and got been that disrespectful to a leader.
And I was gonna just add to what Chief Brackney, and that falls along the lines. What I'm saying is that I think y'all, I hate the term Black community, but I think that many times as Black people, we forget how hard it is for other Black professionals to even exist in these professions in leadership, as if they don't go through what other Black people go through every single day. So you have to think about in leadership, not only is she having to deal with the community, she's also having to deal with her peers, other people in leadership and things of that nature. I always remember, and I want Chief Brackney to talk, but the comment that Charles just made about President Obama getting like 15,000 trash bags full of hate mail, and he laid it out. And nobody had ever seen anything like that, of people just not wanting him to be the president because he's Black, not because he's not qualified, not because he's not a good leader, and just the pain and the suffering that person just went through as a Black person. And then, oh, by the way, Charles, you still have to attempt to do your job. Yeah. Let me elaborate on that too. I got to elaborate on that because we're getting comments from the listeners as well. So we want to make sure that we're being fair and that nobody thinks that we're going easy on you or anything, Dr. Brackney, as well.
Oh, listen, I'm sitting up here at Harvard. You know what they did to this Black female president up here. So y'all know I don't think anybody going easy on me. I'll take any questions you give. I'm from Pittsburgh. Ain't never scared.
Right.
Never scared.
So let me ask you from this perspective, and then I'll share a couple of comments that we have here online, because I think what sort of sums it up is, like, there is a profession, right? Like, there is a certain regard for any office. And a lot of times we don't agree with the parliamentary procedures, right? And so I'm curious, because I hear you speaking a lot more boldly now than you did when you were chief. But I bring that up because it kind of makes sense, right?
No.
I mean, like, but it kind of makes maybe like, but I guess the point I'm making though is that even if you like disagree with that statement, I think a lot of times when people see our Black elected officials, whether it be President Obama, whether it be Dr. Bellamy, whether it be Nakia Walker, Dr. Brackney, whoever we can think of, we have that big brother complex, which is you ain't Black enough. No matter what you do, you're never going to be Black enough. So what I'm saying is, do you think that's part of the issue? Like when we see our comments here, like the citizens a listener saying the citizens tried to tell you about the racist police officers, but you wouldn't believe us until it happened to you. It says you turned your back against the Black community. It says Black people have gone against the new chief many times. So I'm just curious, what role, when you hear stuff like that, what role does it play of it just being, I have to respect this office and the way that I go about things and do things, and I may not appear, quote unquote, Black enough to you sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when someone was in city council and in public said that I should understand women because I'm biracial too. Like, what? And it's a Black person, right? So that's a Black person. And then again, when people say things like, oh, we tried to tell you about the racist officers until it happened to you, or they've gone against the chief, I'm just going to say, show me the money at this point, because I keep every email I have. I keep every documentation of stuff I have. If I watch your city council meetings, people up there saying nothing. I'm watching the meetings, right? I'm watching your civilian review board meetings. You currently have a chief who has said that they're not giving anything to the civilian review board and haven't done since October. I ain't heard nobody up in their faces about that. They were all over me because I said specifically, tell me what you hope to accomplish with the civilian review board. And is this going to get you your desired outcome? That's a logical answer for any resources when you're trying to change systems. Now, let's talk about the leadership. Barack Obama, let's say Dr. Bellamy, let's say, Mayor Walker and myself, when people see you in these positions, they assume somehow you just fell there like manna from heaven, right? They don't see what happened every single day along the way. And let me just break it down for you this way, in just terms of a visual, since we are talking about women's history and breaking history. When we talk about breaking through these glass ceilings, just a visual of it of yourself. Think about a glass ceiling. You go through it head first. That means you are damaging your head. Glass is getting into you, shards are deep into your skin. And as you continue to go up through this and you finally land and break through, you land on a floor that is shaky, that is already broken. And the likelihood that you fall right back down through it because you have no institutional support, no structures or resources to help you, you get damaged all the way back down. And you know what happens? On the way up, you're right, crab in the barrel. On the way down, people are hitting you with like, oh, I tried to tell you that you were being racist. So that's just my thoughts on it.
So if I could say something here. Chief, at least from my vantage point anyway, when you began your tenure here in Charlottesville, it did seem like by and large that you had the support of the Black community. When I started to notice a shift, the type of things that I was hearing was that you were in some ways just as indifferent or just as crooked or harmful to the Black community, albeit maybe in different ways, but to the Black communities as, say, their previous white male chiefs. And so, and honestly, I'm probably not saying anything that a lot of the members of the community haven't shouted at you at some point or another. So what's your response to that? Because I think that's when people took on that mindset for whatever reason, that's when the community at large started to hear Black people be more vocal about the wrongs or perceived wrongs that you had done.
Right. And you know what? I will take that as, let's say everything you're saying is absolutely true, right? And so every single time I've said, when someone said, Chief Brackney is a liar, I said, cool, tell me when I lied. Give me an example. So Max, when you're hearing about the perceived wrongs, tell me an example of when someone said, what did Chief Brackney do that was harmful to the community? I'll take it. Write it in there. If we're saying, if people are comfortable with the commentary, write it in there. I was told all the time, Chief Brackney's a liar. And I'm like, okay, tell me when I lied. Let's roll the tape. Right? But even yourself right now, Max, tell me an example of when the community said Chief Brackney is as harmful. Give me an example of what she did. It can't be, I feel like, I don't believe this. Point to the things that I put in place, the things that were harming the community. And I'll hear you. But I'm going to sit here and wait. Because everything I put got rolled completely back.
Right.
They're no longer putting out there. I just looked at your website. They're not putting your investigative detentions up there. Haven't been posted since 2023. I used to put all of your use of force there by subject, category, date, the type of force, Black male officer, white male officer against Black at the highest level, ain't up there anymore. Look at your internal affairs. I used to put all summaries. I came in and cleaned up. They hadn't closed the case in 3 years in internal affairs.
Preach.
We started posting them. So policies are online that never were online before I arrived there. You have an investigative, a Fourth Amendment analyst who analyzes every body-worn camera in detention up there. Every bit of your arrest data and charging data is now on a website. So talk to me about how I'm hurting the community. I'll hear you.
It's part of it though, like just policing itself, right?
Yeah.
It's like, because police have a job to do, right? And sometimes that job is a harsh consequence sometimes on families and community if the police are supposed to enforce the law. You follow what I'm saying? Like, so it's almost like people expect police to be like social services, you know what I mean? Like instead of doing their job sometimes.
Right. And just add one more thing about policing. I'm the one who's up there in the public with Joe Platania and I, saying we're not charging things like small amounts of marijuana. Let's look at an authentic diversion program. Those are not the conversations that are being had now. They're talking about let's partner with the feds, Project Safe Neighborhoods. I pulled us out of Jade. Don't talk to me about hurting that community. Jade did damage to that community. You know what? I took heat from white male officers for pulling us out of Jade. I pulled us out of school resource officers. I don't care what anybody on the back end says about that. Tell me how that's hurting your community. They're trying to put them back in there so we can continue or reinstitute the school to prison pipeline. So I will hear you. Now, will I take ownership? Maybe my messaging and branding wasn't soft and fuzzy and warm enough for them. But when you got young folks out there being put in prison because somebody's willing to do it because there are discipline problem in school and it's a classroom management issue, miss me with warm and fuzzy. We're trying to make sure that these kids aren't just being streamlined into a carceral state.
Right. So Chief Brackney, I have a question for you. And so again, thank you for being here. So one of the things I always wanted to ask somebody like you that's in your position is that how come we as tax-paying citizens don't approach policing or bad quote unquote officers as an economic issue? So let me give you an example. So you have an officer that has been sued, has caused problems, and let's say he's cost the city now. Let me say this. I don't know how when a city gets sued, where that money comes from. But how come the community or the people that are tax-paying citizens that pay salaries like yours and things of that nature don't approach it as, Chief Brackney, Officer Johnson has had these incidents and they have cost the city $10 million. Can you justify what is the economic reason for keeping this person on the force? We never approach it like that publicly. We approach it as an emotional issue, but I would rather go to you. So you explain to me, Ms. Brackney, how this guy that we pay $50,000 a year, that's beating up everybody, alcoholism, DUI, all these, but this guy continues to be on the force, but he cost the city $10 million. Does that make sense to where the position?
Oh yeah. Listen, I always approach it. It's not even just an economic value in terms of your dollars and cents, right? It's the value, right? The value of your reputation. Right. Because more people who are getting sued, you can't get insured. So the monies come actually from your insurance, but the premiums that you pay come from the taxpayers. Right. So the city is insured against these kind of incidents, right? But here's the other thing. You can't insure for your brand. I fired 7 officers while I was there, demoted several, right? Suspensions of 45 days, right? You can't tell me what I wasn't doing. Go look on the websites about the number of complaints that I was sustaining for just your reason, because then I can terminate and then I can fire, right? That under those conditions. So here's the thing that I would tell you about the finances of it and why you want to do it from a financial standpoint. If an officer is out there, the likelihood that they cost you, not only just that, just, abusive, illegal stops, those kinds of things, that ruins the reputation. People won't even come in your communities to have businesses, right? They're like, I'm not going to be there. There's a ban in Florida. The NAACP says, don't go there if you're Black. That was the same thing will start happening in your communities when officers police the way that they then police. Now, I'm going to give you another example of why this is an economic thing, because the next time the officer does something and they hurt somebody, you just built a case. I'll give you quick examples. Again, I'm going to just hold this Charlottesville accountable to the same way y'all held me so-called accountable. Y'all just had 3 promotions, or you just had promotions of supervisors. Supervisors. One of the supervisors that just got promoted to lieutenant, when he was a sergeant, I demoted him to a corporal. They just re-promoted him to a sergeant, re-promoted him to a lieutenant. I don't hear nothing in the community about this whatsoever. One of the persons who was a corporal that was part of the SWAT incident that was disciplined when people were doing all of those things, sharing videotapes of women that they had sex with, right? Letting their kids come to the firing range and shoot the weapons or detonate our explosives, right? Using misogynistic language and things like that, just got promoted. I don't hear nothing. Another person in this same group was taking pictures or videos of a person with intellectual disabilities, making fun of them, putting them on TikTok for clicks. And they just promoted him. You can't tell me that wasn't all in their jacket with the new chief when he saw it. You can't tell me you didn't see the demotions, the 45-day suspensions. And you still said, you know what, leadership position, yay. You can't talk to me about one officer when I'm giving y'all barrels of officers.
Right. Let me ask you your opinion on 2 things, Chief. The Flock program, that's a topic of interest here in the city. What are your thoughts on that? And then you had mentioned something earlier in the interview about when law enforcement kind of, I guess, is an advocate of holding parents responsible for their children's actions, and why you think that will or won't work. And I bring that up only because I have heard Black individuals say, that's a good way to go. Because in some cases, these are the adult's response. The children's actions are the direct result of the adult. And so if we hold the adult accountable, we can hopefully get these kids in line.
Yeah. And so let me just do the back one. Let's do Flock first. All right. Okay. I'm against Flock. I didn't bring it when they were offering it when I was there. Flock is not new. The reason I'm not into Flock and all these different automatic license plate readers and things of that nature, it's who's surveilled and who isn't. Where are they going to be using these programs and who is not? Makes sense. Typically, you know who's surveilled? poor people, people of color, communities that are very urban, because I can get the most bang for my buck. 99% of the data that Flock or these automatic license plate readers, 99% of the data they download is non-criminal data. So they have all your data for no reason. Under Flock, it's mandatory that any of the data that I get, I share with any other police agency that has Flock. Who's controlling that data? How is it mined? How is it being sent out into the community that you have no say over? And on April 1st, your chief is going to present on Flock and why it's a benefit to the community. All right, I'm saying cool. You better be running Flock all over Park Street. You better be running Flock all over Greenbrier. You better be running Flock all over these other communities. Or are you just going to be right down there on First Street? So that's it. Let's talk about parents and parent accountability. I would be okay with parent accountability. I got a daughter. She grown, right? She done got snatched by me on more than one occasion for behavior that I wasn't approving of. So I can appreciate that. But who is going to be held accountable as a juvenile parent and who is not, right? Prime example that just happened when we were in Charlottesville. Give an example, and it came right out. This person said it. You had a young Black child, let's say a 4 or 5-year-old, who gets out of the house. 2-year-olds get out of the house. They are like ninjas, man. They can get out of any locks, out of any cribs, and next thing you know, they wandering. You just happen to be in the shower. You're a Black child. Somebody's calling the police. DSS is now part of your lifestyle. They're talking about you abused and abandoned your child. You neglected them and you endangered them. White child gets out in the same yard in the yard. Somebody's bringing that child home. Ain't nobody calling 911. They were like, "Oh, look,
that's very true."
They had one right in front of Charlottesville.
Little baby Barbie got out.
One.
True story. I was dropping my 2 teenage sons off at Charlottesville High School last school year, and I'm driving down the road going about 45 miles an hour, and this toddler is walking down the middle of the street in front of CHS, the middle of the street, all by herself, following a ball that's rolling down the hill in like the little gutter. And so I stop the car and kind of park across the street so cars behind me can't get through, and run out and go grab the child. And then her father comes from the house, picks her up and apologizes and goes back.
At least he apologized and wasn't fussing at you.
Right. No.
Touch my child.
No. Apologizes
like
and no.
Now, under most conditions, let somebody else see that little child walking down. Right. And let it be a Black child or a brown child or somebody who's non-white appearing.
Right.
Somebody's calling 911.
Very
and
true.
You know, DSS is all up in your stuff.
Yep.
Right? Let this be a white child that's like, oh, you must be so exhausted. You could barely get a shower in.
Right.
And your child got out. Very different. So that's how I feel when it comes to juveniles. If we mean that every time you charge a juvenile, you charging their parent, roll with it. I mean, everybody, not just in certain incidents. Your child shoplifts, you get charged too. Is that how we're rolling with this? Or is it only with certain crimes that we are, because we don't know if their parents are out there encouraging children to shoplift. You know, we don't know who's encouraging what. Just because they're catching these on these videos lately and they're saying that the parents are encouraging it, they should be held accountable. I think we all should be accountable for our children, but as long as we're doing it equitably and just, which is probably never going to happen in a system that's not built for us.
Now, Dr. Brackney, we are up against the hour, so we get ready to take a break and we'll come right back to you. And let's talk about sort of post police chief life and like sort of how that ended and, you know, I'm like where that took your journey. But as we go to break, though, to kind of close this off, though, if I'm not mistaken, the SROs for the schools were something that came up during your leadership as well. And weren't you against, or aren't you against SROs like in high schools?
I pulled
talking about bringing that back.
I pulled them. They did. I mean, we won't talk about all the private conversations where people say it was the schools who did this. Yeah, right. Y'all can believe that if y'all think schools were really trying to get rid of them. Yes, I pulled them for reasons. You can keep schools safe. There's actually these physical security officers, school security officers, who can keep the perimeters and the building safe. You don't need them inside the schools. They weren't doing anything except classroom management. They were getting part of the discipline. And instead of having them in the schools, I took those same SROs and had them patrol all of your bus stops, so that's where it all jumps off. It's not, what happens in the community finds itself in the school, but you sitting at that bus stop, it's going to start there from the time you on the bus. So I took those same officers who knew those kids, put them at all these bus routes and bus stops. You can disrupt a whole lot of things right from the beginning.
That's fair. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So we're going to take a quick break, family. Tell a friend, because that is a lot to digest. We're going to need some water. And now we are joined by none other than Dr. RASHALL Brackney, former police chief of this city of Charlottesville. And we're going to be right back with her to talk about, life since being police chief, and what's transpired. So you don't want to miss it. Much, much more great info for your family. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor, AA Ron, IMHO Talk Show. IMHO Talk Show. Yeah, buddy. I to the ISM, H to the ISO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor, and still in the booth in the building with none other than Dr. RASHALL Brackney. Join us catching up with Sister Girl. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. You doing good? You doing good so far this Sunday afternoon?
Yes.
Awesome. Good. Awesome. Good to hear. That's what we want to hear. So to pick up where we left off, so we kind of went through you making history as a female and as a Black woman at that. But the goals that you had for the police force here, that maybe didn't turn out, as you would have wished. So let's go into sort of what's been happening since then. First of all, when they let you go, now let's be honest about this. If like before, so we're going to get into the lawsuit, right? And what the grounds was for that. But doesn't employers have the right to say, we don't like the way that you're doing it, so we don't want you to be the chief anymore? Now, I know I really overly simplified that. No, I know I overly simplified. I did that on purpose. But, kind of is what it is. It's like, was it wrongful? Like, we just don't like the way you're doing it, so we're going to get rid of you. Like, so what's your rebuttal?
Yeah, so I can appreciate that, right? Like, if someone says, hey, you know what? I'm not clear on your vision. We're not sure where you're going with this. In your contract, it says we can terminate your contract without cause or for cause, right? Mm-hmm. So for cause, y'all know if they could have terminated Sister for cause, they would have. Mm-hmm. There ain't nobody who's not going to fire us if they can, especially since there were different benefits to doing that. Right. The city would have just had to give me 2 weeks notice and said, here's the reason, here's the cause, and you're fired. But the city decided to terminate my contract without cause. In other words, no cause. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to say we don't like where you're going, but we're terminating your contract without cause, because then that would just say that we have some reason or some cause to terminate you. Mm-hmm. So that's when you start peeling back the layers and say, yeah, you can terminate me because we don't like where you're going. But then here's what you can't do. Mm-hmm. Can't then go around telling everybody I'm incompetent. Can't go around telling everybody that I'm unprofessional. I'm difficult to work with. You can't then go around telling everybody that you had told me and had conversations that you wanted me to look at recruiting differently. You can't then turn around and say, you know what? 3 days later, all these surveys that are coming from the Police Benevolence Association with Mike Wells, which is the equivalent of their union, saying we don't have confidence in Chief Brackney. And, I'll call him out, Bellamy Brown, working with him, who's head of your civilian review board. You can't have them colluding to say, let's create these things to make it seem like she's not doing her job. Oh, and it's at the exact same time she's investigating and terminating officers for corruption, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't do it at the exact same time when Mike Wells is recording Mooney and saying things and playing these tapes to Boyles and doing that. You can't also then start creating fake documents and putting them into my personnel jacket, because Black people always got to have receipts. Mm-hmm. So everyone knows I was recording my city manager. I have my stuff on recording. I have the papers he had in front of him, and then the fake set of documents he and Lisa Robertson produced later as to why I was being terminated. You can't interfere with my contract like that and have these back scene conversations, where Bellamy Brown is texting Heather Hill. Why are they having these conversations and indulging her when we've already agreed she's going to be terminated? Well, how would he know that in July or August? How would that all happen unless people are behind the scenes working to do things differently? So had they just decided to terminate my contract and like the mafia kept quiet, they might have got away with it. But they didn't do that because their arrogance, again, about how you treat Black women allowed them to go back and forth, including things like, Snook and all the comments they made about my incompetence. Oh, Black women were leaving because of her. I was the only Black woman that was there. There was no Black woman who, if they were leaving because of me, it was because I was leaving, because I was the only one there when they all started talking Black women were leaving because of me. Hadn't been no Black women there in over 2 years. I was there by myself as the Black woman chief.
So was that the grounds for the lawsuit? The things that you just named and lay out, that's your grounds, and give us an update on the news that broke in January about it being dismissed.
So interestingly enough, so not only that, discrimination, the way they treated me versus people who had been terminated for cause. They still allowed them in the building. They locked me out of the building, locked me out of all of my access. And then I had to report to Tito or a civilian to even come into the building, taking my pictures down from the building. Even still to this day, crazy stuff, cutting off my credit card access so I couldn't charge things, pulling me off committees and still saying I'm the chief, or putting out that somebody else was the chief when I was still the chief. Like, they didn't do that to anybody. And they had fired some white boys for some stuff. But they still kept coming in every day and no one did anything like that to them.
Was there any part of you before you got to that point? Was there any part of you? Because I believe in women's intuition, and before being a police chief, you were a woman. Was there any part of you before all of this madness happened where you were like, "Yeah, this ain't going to end well. I might be fired"?
That's why I was recording people, because you're gonna have to need receipts. So because something said I don't trust the system, and I don't trust these, and there was these little cues when they started taking up for making excuses for individuals who were involved in misconduct. And I'm thinking, why are you all coming at me when y'all should be like, okay, it became always an excuse. And I'm like, something ain't right here. And, there became a time when Mooney to my face said, I haven't always supported you and done the right things. And I'm like, that's not comfortable. That means you're doing something behind my back. And again, I don't ever forget I'm a Black woman in the South, period. So yes, my intuitions, Max, kicked in long before. I'm like, it's like a cheap neck. Something ain't going right.
Right. And so what's the status since January, and what does it mean that the judge dismissed the charge?
He dismissed 12 charges. All 12 charges. Without any evidence. At this stage, when he dismissed it, you're not even supposed to present evidence. It's supposed to be, here's the charges, and if everything I say is true, you then go forward and schedule it for trial, depositions, etc. There's a point, if you look at the transcripts from when Moon, who's dismissing everybody's, I'm gonna let y'all just know, 85-year-old Moon, who's making decisions about these cases. At one point during our transcript, he even basically insinuates that I need to put on my big girl clothes, that I knew what I was getting into when I came there. So that makes it okay to do the illegal things because I knew what I was getting into. So we're in the appeal stage. And, I'm just leaving it up in God's hands. I ain't got time for this. This will end the way it's supposed to end. And if it does, I'm releasing every tape I got. Just for the record. Release tapes.
So we're having the book festival here in Charlottesville, Virginia Book Festival. I happened to attend a talk yesterday by Roxanne Gay. She wrote the book Opinions, and she made an interesting statement during her interview. She said that I'm going to add a little bit context to it. So we have all at some point in our lives heard someone either tell us or told someone else that, know your history. We got to know where we came from so that we're not doomed to repeat it. And Roxanne's point was that, like, knowing our history doesn't necessarily matter anymore, because history does repeat itself, and not just does it repeat itself, but it repeats itself boldly and right up front and in your face. Yeah. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and then I am going to do it. Do you agree with that?
Yes. As a matter of fact, so when I'm done with this, I'm literally on a train up to Brown University to teach a course to basically all the Ivy chiefs and their staff on just this. And the first part I say is not only just know your history, you need to own it publicly. So knowing your history is one thing, but if I don't tell you and own it publicly, that's when we're most likely to repeat it. Because think about the book bans that are going on out there. Think about the conversations over critical race theory. Think about all of the things in media that are being distorted. We are in a postmodern or post-truth modern era, when you can have things like alternative facts be a part of the narrative. It is important to know the history, which is a perfect segue into one of the things that I've been doing is I am writing a book. It is called The Bruising of America, When Black, White, and Blue Collide. And it will talk about those kinds of history things, my personal narrative through Charlottesville. And then the second book that I'm currently writing at the exact same time, so you all will hear it here first, is your inheritance doesn't have to be your legacy. So we inherit a lot of things, but that doesn't have to be the thing that we leave behind, for other people.
Thank you. Thank you for that exclusive drop. Now, when did you say the date? When is the book available?
No, I'm still in the writing stage.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
All y'all listeners, if y'all got working out there, you got book folks to say, "Hey, I'm into publishing. Come talk to me. Holler at your girl."
That's right. Now, what got you into that space? Since we're talking about that, like how did that passion come to be, or was that already part of your career goals to get into the classroom?
So I had already been teaching, but after, my departure, George Mason University called me and said, "Hey, listen, we would love to have you here. And would you consider coming on as a distinguished professor?" And, I was hesitant to think about it full time because, my career had ended the way I thought it was supposed to end. But then, as I continued to sit with it, think about the audiences that you can reach. You can educate an entire generation about these issues, and not just in Charlottesville. They go across the world. There are 40,000 students at George Mason. Imagine being able to access them, and then they access their networks. So you don't have to worry about a cloistered space or an incestuous space where it's only in a small area. It actually is, I think, a different way in which I'm being called. So George Mason is where my anchoring of my courses are. I'm teaching a course this semester called Policing Black Bodies. Highly, it's a waitlisted course, so people are really interested in it. And then I'm currently up at Harvard, so I'm doing both things. I'm a fellow up here working on a social justice impact project on policing.
Now, Max, I don't know if that was a Freudian slip or you purposely said, or you purposely meant to say end, Dr. Brackney. You said the way your career ended. Is that the end of chiefing police, or is that?
I don't know if I will say yes, it's the end. But at this season, at this time, I think I am now positioned for a time such as this to be in this space. Now, if I'm being led to another one, that only remains to be seen. There's that saying, in his heart a man plots his course, but God is the one who ordains our steps. So I'm not plotting anything. I'm just whatever pathway and purpose continues to unfold, I'm going to walk it.
Gotcha. Now, and I have to ask as well, you have a strong Black man in your household as well. How is he taking all of this? Like all of the drama, all of the good and bad publicity I'm like, what has he been saying? Like, what kind of arm bearer has he been? Because I can just imagine, like for me and Razor, you know what I mean? Like we probably had the fellas, up on the town hall steps, but
Listen, and this brother's from Jackson.
Bang, bang.
And you're a strong character too. So he's like, nah, I got it. Don't worry about it, baby. I got it.
That brother's originally from Jackson, Mississippi, right? He went to an HBCU, Tougaloo, pledged Alpha, and grew up Kojic. So, and still is. So, there's been times when I think he really wanted to go into his ethnic bag, and then there were times I think he wanted to just go in his straight up husband bag, and say, you know what, I don't care who she is, and that's my wife, and you don't get to do that to her. But you know what, we're playing the long game here. We're playing the long game here, and so he's been an amazing support. The work that he does, I mean, when you talk about strong Black intellectuals, all his works are on lynching and slavery and slave narratives. And the second book he's writing right now is called Promises Lynched. So this brother's doing his work too. He's extremely supportive. And, he's there. That's my ride or die. But there has been times when he started to drop the Dr. Wheelock, and it was going to be straight up Stefan up in that house.
I feel you. So you got to feel more comfortable, more free in your current space, right? Would I be accurate, or do you feel like police department was your lifelong dream, and that's more your element, or do you feel? Yeah.
So policing was never my lifelong dream. Like literally, I was led to that, and and thought I had fell into it, but in reality, it was my calling, and although I didn't know it at the time. I would just say this about where I am now and where I was then. I was well equipped to do that work then. I think I'm even more equipped now with different experiences and different exposures. My 21-year-old self when I started this job in policing and my 61-year-old self right now are two very different people. And so being able to do this work differently and impact differently. And maybe it's, the trainings that I do, I can reach departments, and still not have to manage what's going on my own. So, we'll see what's happening. I don't know if it's ended. I can tell you this. I ain't coming back to Virginia to be no chief anywhere.
That's fine. Okay.
Hey, Charles, can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Brackney, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing yourself to be stretched and tested. Thank you for allowing us to watch you. I watched the movie with Max yesterday about Shirley Chisholm. And too often I always wonder if people had the chance to do it again, would they? And hearing you talk about how life has changed for you and you're more equipped now, I just want to say thank you.
Yep, thank you for that. Definitely echo those sentiments. Yep. It looks like you may have lost your audio. Did you lose your audio? I think she did. Uh-oh. All right, let me try to re-add her in. All right, Dr. Brackney, can you hear us? I think we may have lost her. Well, Matt, I just had one other thing for her. Yeah, still got a video. I just had one other thing for her. Maybe she can reconnect the audio. And I was going to let you, close out how you want, because I know she has to go at 1:30, and then we have, next guest coming in. But the one thing I'm curious about is, and I'll pose it to y'all, is it possible to be diplomatic and get things done? Or if they keep if you're a Black person that's easily digestible to the public, and you just stay on board and you don't rock the boat too much, can you really cause change? Or on the flip side, if you're really trying to change things, the system is not gonna let you do that easily. That's the question I always had, because I always thought, Chief Brackney was like pretty palatable.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I can see when you have an Akai or a Wes, I can get how that could rub people. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when she got ousted, to me personally, I was like, that the system does not want to change, no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that the chief was palatable to many.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that that's was necessarily a bad thing. And I do believe that if you aren't rocking the boat at all, then you aren't doing something right. So I think it requires a little bit of that good trouble in order to make real change. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I'm sorry that we lost her, because I did want to just give her some flowers as well, and just let her know that, there's a lot of people who were happy to have her serve our community. A lot of people that respect what she did, both male and female. And, there's a few takeaways, more than a few takeaways that I have from my experiences with the chief. And, she was, very bold, non-apologetic in what she did. Definitely, brilliant, intelligent lady, outspoken, didn't back down, and was committed to, not just what she was hired to do here, but also committed to that internal compass as well, and accomplish what she knew was the right thing for the individuals that live in this community. And so I certainly respect her for that. And also it's as a woman to woman, it says a lot. Men obviously have to balance different things, but in terms of how they function in day to day, and that's much easier for y'all, I believe. You're able to simplify it, and you aren't judged by it, and all those things I feel apply. But as far as a woman,
we're judged, but it's simpler,
right? But
I don't know if it's simpler.
Well, you're not judged to the extent I believe that women are, but so I recognize that the chief had to balance all of these things, such as being Black, being a woman, being law enforcement, being a wife and a mom, being an advocate, being whatever it is that she meant to the Black community, being whatever it is that she was supposed to be to the white community, being all of these different things, and then trying to not only just balance that, but choosing which one of those things were going to spearhead whatever space she was in at the moment. And it's a balance to make all those things work together at one time, and then also pick one, choose one, because that's just what the situation calls for. Yeah. And we as Black women play that game daily, and it is not easy for all. And when someone does make it look easy, that's a gift, that's a talent. Not to say that that's what's going on internally, but it is a gift. And so I respect her for all of those reasons, and thank her for her service here. Yeah. Wish her the best of luck.
Thank you for that, Max. And Dr. Brackney, you rejoined like in the midst of a praise right there.
Stop drop me like they did my contract.
Like that.
That's what we do here in Charlottesville.
But Dr. Brackney, I know you have a tight schedule and you have to go, but we definitely, wanted you to receive that praise that Ms. Max so eloquently gave you, and also, you could have the last word. I guess to kind of sum a lot of that up, just going forward, like with your hopes and maybe like newfound goals are, especially in the face of systematic change, and being Black and being Black in leadership in the midst of that.
And any encouragement to the women that admire you, and just would take some words of advice from you.
That's good. Yeah.
The first thing I would say is Max, you're right. Know your true north. Know your true north. That's not always easy to discover along the way, especially when you're trying to juggle. As I tell people, Black women, we juggle glass balls. We don't just juggle balls. You drop one of them and the consequences are devastating to whomever at that point in time. Second, as I tell everyone, I start every one of my days, whether it's in the classroom now, or when it was in policing, you know, with a certain Psalm 78, 72. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them. And so having that integrity of heart is part of what made all of the feelings of impossibilities possible. And knowing that I've been uniquely gifted and skilled to do the work that I'm called to do. As for the women out there, the young women, you know, people like my daughter, who's 30 and who believes I can do anything.
That's right.
What I say to her is all the time is, we get to do this work. We ain't got to do this work, but we get to do this work. And when you go into everything you do, getting to do it, the opportunity to do it, being blessed to be put in that space, don't ever shrink back from that space. You own that space with everything in you. There is nobody in that room who is better than you will ever be on your worst day. And that's how I go about my day. And I'm just fortunate and lucky enough and blessed enough that I've been put in places as difficult as they have been. But in order to them, please be ready. When those opportunities, you got to be prepared. You can't just expect that it's going to happen to you. You got to be prepared. You got to be able to see it, just like that intuition. Like, take that move, be bold, be brave. And if you're going to bet on somebody, bet on yourself, because you can never, ever lose. You know you can guarantee the outcome if you're betting on yourself.
Right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
You think that covers it, man?
That covers it. That's a wrap.
Well, you know, I mean, like, while we, Dr. Brackney, please don't be a stranger. Keep us in touch, especially when, you know, when that book is about to drop. You know, definitely got to have you back then, if not before then.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, listen, I do a podcast every week. It's called Black Under the Law. So we talk about all the things in the criminal legal system. Drop in, listen to us. We've had some fire conversations.
Okay.
Awesome. Good stuff.
All right. That's it. Thank you again for sharing your Sunday with us.
Thank you. Have an amazing rest of your day. And to our path cross again, be well.
Be blessed.